Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I've got a great guest to bring to you today. I know I say that every week, but it really is true this time. With me today is Buck Angel. He is a transgender adult film actor and director, and he is something of a controversial figure online these days. Buck, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Seems like now you have to be controversial to get on anything.
Yeah, but also the definition of who's controversial is now so wide open.
There you go. Right. Why am I controversial? Because I speak my mind and my opinion, right?
Yeah, but so just to start, I come at things from an interesting perspective, like you, part of the LGBT community. I'm very right wing politically, not a social conservative, but very right wing, libertarian conservative, and vocal on all of these issues. And I've gotten a lot of backlash in the LGBT community for that. I was actually kicked off of a men's soccer team for gay men because my presence supposedly endangered hypothetical future members who identified as trans.
What? Wait, what? I don't even understand what that means. What?
Yes.
Wow. I mean, what is happening? What is happening to our community where we're not allowed to have even a political different opinion? Are you kidding me? Well, I'm sorry. That's actually upsetting.
Well, it's not, that was ages ago and I'm way over it, but that's not even a big deal. But I come at it from that perspective where I'm constantly confronting this intolerance in our own community that I know you face. But then also, I'm politically conservative, and that puts me on the same side of the aisle as a lot of people with some very outdated or views that are hostile to me. And so, one thing I try to do, because like you, I've questioned some of the wokeness and the extreme trans activism, but I have a lot of compassion for people like you, people like Blair, who has experienced gender dysphoria, who are transgender or transsexual, but a lot of people, a lot of my audience is more conservative, and honestly, they just don't understand it. So maybe to start, tell us, what were you like as a kid? What was your background, and how did your gender dysphoria or transgender identity first come into play?
Well, yeah, first off, thanks so much for giving me the space to talk about it, especially to people who don't, understand. I don't need to speak over there. I need to speak to the people who don't. And really, on some level, I'm speaking to my parents right now because my parents are the very conservative, right, Trump voting people. And so, that being said, right now I'm going to talk to my parents. And so how it is this. Yes, I was born a girl. I'm biologically female. I could say that I never felt feminine or like a girl, and I was always much of a tomboy. I'm 59. I was raised in the 60s and 70s, totally different time. But my parents saw the masculinity in me, and they saw the boyness. So that I was totally raised as little Buck, But I would have to go back and forth between the girl name and the boy name, and wearing a dress and being able to wear boy clothes, just because family events. And back in the day, people didn't get it. So on some level, my parents socially transitioned me in a little way. They didn't give me hormones. I didn't do any of that. And I had an amazing childhood. I can tell you, I didn't have a bad childhood. I had an awesome childhood. What happened was, the thing that we talk about, which is puberty. And that did cause me to have a little bit of distress in my body and not understanding. But I ended up identifying as a gay woman, and that caused a lot of problems in itself, a long story. But what happened was, I became a drug addict. I became an alcoholic. I became homeless, prostitution, all of it. I shouldn't even be here, to be honest with you. And somehow I found a therapist who understood me and my gender dysphoria 30 years ago. And that was something that literally changed everything for me. I had a conversation. I could understand what was going on with me. I felt like a man. I didn't want to be a woman. And so that's why I really consider myself a transsexual. I had a sex change, for a lack of a better expression, to live as a man today. And so for people who don't understand that, you don't have to understand it, and you might not understand it. The only thing I ever ask from anybody, and I get from a lot of right side people and very conservative people, they respect me because I respect my space and where I come from. And also, I'm not pushing on you to accept me. Either you accept me or not, but what you can't do is disrespect me. So I don't expect for you to understand it if you don't want to take the time to. But what I don't want from you is hate. And so that's why I stand here today, to talk to the people who hate me. I don't need to talk to that side. I need to talk to people who don't understand me and hate me. And now I'm getting it from my own community. Can you imagine how heartbreaking that is? It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. So, I mean, because your background, you are a bit on the older side compared to those of us in the Gen Z youngins. But what was it like not only identifying as a gay woman and then as transgender, but also doing it in the 60s and 70s and 80s. I mean, how much has changed, and do people today take it for granted how much progress we've made?
That, it's something that's what I get myself into trouble with, because, I'm 59. I transitioned like 27 years ago when there wasn't the internet, and I'm not telling anybody to feel sorry for me or be like, oh, Buck, you're the end all be all. No, I'm not. I'm an older guy now who has a different opinion than a lot of the younger generation. That's with every generation. You and I both know that. So that being said, though, I get disrespected because my ideas are different. I transitioned because I have gender dysphoria, which almost killed me. I was two suicide attempts, alcoholism, homelessness. I will not sit around and be told what I am when I am disagreeing. That I am a biological female who always felt like a male and transitioned, but I will never be a biological male. I'll always be a woman who wants to be a man. And so because of that, the younger generation is trying to say that, I'm disrespectful to them, that they're not biologically female. And this is what I don't understand. Let me say this. This is what I don't understand. Why are we disrespecting factual information? And the reason why many of us transition, because we cannot live in our biological space. And so why is a newer generation disrespecting many of us who feel this way for their own self and for their own narrative, and pushing out the people who don't necessarily belong to that narrative? That's the part that I push back on. Anyone can be whatever they want to be, and anyone can identify it. But what you can't do is tear apart a system that has saved lives for many, many, many years, including mine.
Yeah, and let's touch on that for a bit, because for some conservatives who don't understand it or think it's all just wrong or whatever, something that often gets through to people is talking to them about true children and youth who have persistent gender dysphoria for years. Because now we can get into this. We have a new problem where it's become trendy. There's like non-binary, there's all sorts of things, but true gender dysphoric children, like Blair White, my friend, when she was growing up, for years and years, always felt like a girl from a very young age. We've talked about it on this program. Those kinds of people, if they don't socially transition and then later in life have sex change, right, through medical transition, they might kill themselves. They'll experience severe depression and anxiety. And that is like a medical thing. And wasn't even particularly controversial until recently. So can you talk about that? Why people should not be opposed to accepting trans people and letting them get the treatment they need when we're talking about that context?
Yeah, when we're talking about that context. So that being said, I want to just lay out this, because transgender used to mean a specific thing, like myself, or people who felt like a man or a woman. It was always in the binary space. And then that's why I say a sex change, right? Because I was a woman who wanted to be a man, and I look at me. There's no doubt about it that I'm a man today. But that being said, then transgender got somehow co-opted, I like to say, into an umbrella term, which now is all about anyone and anyone who can self-ID as trans, no medical space. And again, it took me a long time to say, okay, I'm okay with that. But what I'm not okay with is you taking out the medical space, which is my space, which is a transsexual space. And so I brought back, along with Blair and many of us, we started to reclaim transsexual, to sort of separate ourselves from this new identity politics and this new sort of ideology, I like to call it. And that's okay. They can have all of that. But when it starts to infringe on a medical space, that I need hormones, I need surgery, I need to look and feel like a man, whatever that means, right? All of those things are important to people like Blair and I who have gender dysphoria. And we aren't lumped in. We should not be lumped in with those people. Yet they want to, on some level, sort of say what we're doing is wrong because it's heteronormative, as if that's a bad thing, and that we want to be binary, as if that's a bad thing. 99% of the world lives in a binary space. 99% of the world understands biology. So for me, I find it to be disrespectful from within my own community, who I've done tons of work for this community, and to tell me what I'm doing is wrong or disrespectful or systematic something or other. I mean, they're just making stuff up in order to pull me down. I'm like, what? I've survived this long. If I did not have a sex change, I would not be here. And you will never take it from me. That's how I feel about it. It's like, you cannot take my space from me. I don't care how much you try to shut my voice down, or that I'm transphobic, or I'm a TERF, or I'm, it's like they continue to try to knock my feet out. It's like, what?
It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But one of the things you've touched on here is like, you guys are reclaiming the word transsexual, right? But I've heard woke people say transsexual is a slur. I've heard, and then what they accuse you guys of is medicalizing transgenderism, right? They would say that it's just a valid, healthy identity and everyone's just born this way. It's not a medical issue. And maybe they have good intentions with that, but it's really a problematic way to think about it, right?
Well, they might have good intentions, but those good intentions shouldn't involve telling other people that their identity doesn't count. That's the hypocrisy within that whole space. They don't like mine, yet they can attack me, right? But when I say, wait a minute here, kids, that's not the way it works. And I transitioned before half you kids were even born. So whether or not you like my politics or whatever, you shouldn't be looking at me that way as if I'm somehow affecting your identity and your transition space. So no, that's the part that I get very upset about, is that what I'm doing is bad and wrong, because I'm saying that I never said you have to be this way to be this way. That's why I said transgender is an umbrella term now. Have fun with it, kids. You go, but you will not attack transsexual space. So that's an important space. And that's why I'm here, my friend, because there are kids out there who see me and don't want to belong to that transgender umbrella. They want to be like me. And if I leave this space, there are very few people like us who are speaking up about this and saying, I see kids out there who are like me, who just want to have the change, just want to grow up as a man. I'm a success on many levels, right? Entrepreneur, I create, I do so much. I raised myself up only because I'm here as a man. It's the only reason why I'm a success today. So that's the problem that I see. Why are we not giving me a voice to say, hey, wait, there's some youngsters out there that are like me, not like you. And they need to see their future in me. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, there's this image pressed by the woke LGBT community of what a trans person looks like and believes and has to say. Same with gay. I hear from a lot of young gay people who identify with me or a few other figures that are out there, because they don't want to defund the police, have Medicare for all, right? Tear down the system, embrace the Communist Manifesto. They don't believe there are 1,000 genders. All these things that have been lumped in with these identities in these communities. So as part of what we're doing, reclaiming them and showing people that you can be an individual and invalid in those ways without buying into that groupthink and that community's political mentality they've tried to really push on us.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's exactly right, my friend. And it's the same with the whole LGBTQ community is a mess. I mean, I thought if I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for gay men. I'm going to tell you, gay men stood by me from the beginning. And so when I start seeing sort of this homophobic kind of undertone coming from the trans community, I'm like, what? Wait a minute here. Gay men and gay women did fight for us. I know for a fact because they actually did it for me. They fought for me to get here. So
you were there.
Yeah, that's right. I was there during AIDS. That will make me cry. I was there during AIDS. I lost all my friends to AIDS. How dare we have any conversation around gay being transphobic? If you're homosexual, you're transphobic. Like what? Like this is the stuff that I will not stand for. Ever will I stand for that, because that's not what our community is about. LGBT, okay, which is what it used to be. The Q was added on later, but I'm telling you, they always stood together. We had our shit. But I hung out with everyone, and I identified as a gay woman for many years of my life. And so how can we just cut that off on the T? And then so a group of people took the T off and they started an LGB alliance. And then the trans people got all pissed at that. So there's no winning on some level. It's either you completely submit or you're a transphobe and a TERF and whatever else you want to call me.
One thing that's been disturbing to me, and interestingly, I don't think most actual trans people believe this, that it is transphobic to not want to date somebody, or like, for example, I'm not going to never say never, but I can't really imagine a scenario where I would date a trans man, because the biological element of it has been very foundational to my identity and my struggle. I wouldn't say never, never, but it's very unlikely, I think. They would say, some of these people, particularly cisgender, straight, woke allies, would say that that is transphobic, or like some very online trans blue checks would say that. But actually, I don't think most trans people truly think you're transphobic if you don't date them. But that is absolutely a belief in this woke community that's pushed out there. What do you think about all that? Is that one of the things that's gotten you in trouble?
Oh my God. Yeah, of course. Almost everything I post gets me in trouble because I go against the narrative. And I have to tell you that I'm just not fearful to be pushed on. I'm not. I got here because I started in pornography. Come on, you cannot be in a worse profession. Nobody likes pornographers, right? So that being said, I've already grown a thick skin against the hate that I got from everyone around the world when I started. So that being said, now I got the hate from the trans community because I speak up about these things. And this idea that if you don't date a trans person, first off, right, I created a genre of pornography of trans men. Gay men were my base, my fan base, but they were so freaked out by it. They were like, you cannot force somebody to be attracted to you. You cannot force somebody to change. Gay men are attracted to biological men with a penis. That's an actual real thing. I know that from my work and from you. But somehow I got them to understand me because I never pushed. Does that make sense? I never said, if you don't like me, you're transphobic. That would be just ridiculous.
Yeah. It's also just like one of these things with this mentality where like my pronouns are this, this, this. And if you don't acknowledge it, you are erasing my existence. Or if you don't date trans people, you're denying that they're really what they say they are. All these things. It strikes me that in a lot of this, there's a fundamental insecurity, because if you're truly confident in yourself and you've transitioned and you know who you are and what you identify as, if somebody doesn't use the right pronoun, maybe that's rude. We could talk about it. I would generally use it in most scenarios, but
sure,
you're not going to have your identity erased by that because you're confident in yourself as an individual. I feel like a lot of this woke stuff, this activist stuff, comes from insecurity.
That's right. No, you have so right. So here I am. I remember when people would misgender me. It was horrible. It sucked. You know, they would totally call me she because I was in the middle of my early transition, or I hadn't started taking hormones. It isn't comfortable. But what it didn't do was make me buckle under and tell everybody there. What it did is it made me be a little bit tougher. And so this is the other controversial thing I say. I believe that people should have to, for lack of a better word, suffer or have a little pushback for a while. It creates you in a way that's the real world. The world doesn't all accept me. It never will. But I found my way. It's never going to accept you, my friend, for being a gay man. That's a reality, especially a gay conservative man. You just took it up a notch, dude. But that's not what we're teaching the youngsters. We are teaching youngsters to be fragile, to be victim-y. When they don't get their way, they should throw a temper tantrum. I will not. I have a kid. I would never raise my child that way. And so on some level, I'm the trampaw of the community, and I'm a hard-ass trampaw. I'm like, get over there and just do it. Like, what? And those are the kids that follow me. The kids who want to have some pushback and want to be a badass and not want to be fragile about everything anybody says about them. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I've always found it condescending, the idea that like misgendering is violence or something. Are you saying trans people are so fragile and so weak after everything they've been through that they're going to fall apart over a few words?
No, that's why I understand the trans umbrella. It's different than a transsexual. We gotta like seriously come in here and be like, we are. I mean, imagine, just let's use Caitlyn Jenner. Caitlyn Jenner is a transsexual woman, but look at her. A lot of people she openly transitioned into the world. Damn, more power to her. But she doesn't sit there and crumble and cry because half the community hates her too, right? Because
before her politics, pretty much everyone was fine with it too. Like,
right. No, not true. Our community was really shitty to her because they said she's entitled. She got her. That's the other thing.
Oh, I meant like not a lot of backlash from the right.
Not from the right.
Some. Yeah. But not nearly as much as you'd think when she first transitioned and everything.
That's right. Yeah. But it was from the community, though. The community was really shitty to her, and they have been. To people who have influence. They don't like influence. They don't like people. Only people they want to have the influence are the people they appoint to the influence, right? That's why it's a very fascist community now. It's a very weird creepy thing that's going on. It's like, look, I don't think like any of you, but I am a transsexual. And as far as I remember, community is built on like-minded but different identities, right? We have one ultimate goal, but if we've never all thought alike. That's just ridiculous behavior.
So one of the other things that I think is really tricky, because I have a lot of compassion for gender dysphoric youth, but there are questions like medically transitioning children. And that's something that the activist community pushes hard, as you must affirm that if an 8-year-old tells you they're trans, if an 11-year-old wants to take puberty blockers, all these things. But like, I think of myself, and sexuality is different than gender identity, absolutely. But like, I could never have figured myself out. I didn't have myself figured out at 19, let alone 12, right? So I don't think it's transphobic to oppose permanent medical transitions for youth. I'm fine with social transitions, and kind of like, if they are persistent, then maybe in their teenage years transitioning. But this is a thing, yet we have to kind of navigate it, because I also see a lot of reactionary right-wing social cons that say even social transitioning a child is child abuse.
No,
and it's like, they don't understand gender dysphoria, the reality of what these kids are experiencing. What is the middle road there, and what are these people missing?
Yeah, so great. Thanks for that question. So I am opposed to medically transitioning children, and that's another controversial stance I have. But I've done a lot of research, and I deal with some trans kids here in Los Angeles, and youngsters 10 under, and their parents are socially transitioning them, because I have, been talking with them about, why would you want to medicalize a child? Number one, that's the first thing I say. Why would you want to do that? What if your child isn't 100% trans? And 16, they decide, wait a minute, mom, you transitioned me without really me understanding. Isn't that the whole role of a parent? The whole role of a parent. My kid comes and asks me all kinds of questions because it doesn't understand shit. So I'm here as a parent to help the kid find that next level of space. So when we start to say kids at 8 should start taking hormones without the amount of research, and also where Europe and all the other places are pulling back on that, right? They are not doing that as much as they were, or they're discontinuing it. We are continuing to push on it to do that. So I personally believe social transitioning is what I did. Right? I suffered a little through puberty. Like we all suffered through puberty. That's not specifically to trans. That's a human thing that all humans deal with on some level when it comes to puberty. But to actually medicalize a child, and I would say that maybe there's 1 out of X amount that might need that medicalization, but you're going to medicalize all. And then what's happening today is called detransitioning, which is never.
You're not allowed to use that word.
What?
You're not allowed to talk about it. You're not allowed to use that word. That's deemed off limits by the activists.
Oh yeah, dude. That's why I talk about it.
Yeah, I know.
And that's why.
Can you explain for listeners what detransition is?
Detransitioners are people who transitioned when they thought they were trans, when they were not. And they were on some level led into this space because there was no pushback. It was all affirmative gender care, which means that when a child walks in and says, I'm trans, you're not allowed as a therapist or any medical worker to say, well, wait a minute here. What does that mean to you? Blah, 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 blah. Maybe you could be gay. Maybe there's other things happening with you. Maybe you just want to dress like a boy. Maybe you're just a feminine man, blah, blah, blah. Right? Now you don't get to do that. Now it's like, okay, you're trans. Let me write you a prescription for testosterone. Like what? So then what happens is, because I have a lot of detransitioning friends, because I have a huge compassion for them. And then they're like, yeah, Buck, nobody gave us therapy. Nobody gave us pushback. Every single one of them is saying the same thing. And there are thousands of them. And then they're just like, no one said anything. And then I realized this isn't the right road for me. When I'm like, but I've never thought that way. I have never said, oh my God, I made a mistake. I've only said, oh my God, my life is amazing. So how is that happening now? Because we're rushing people through. We're literally creating this rush of trans people. Why would we rush somebody to medicalization? That's what I question. What's the rush?
Yeah. And unfortunately, you're not allowed to question it without being attacked, but it is important because I think the push to rush it is because there are trans kids committing suicide. right?
Well,
And
a
so
lot
they
of
want
kids commit. Wait a minute here. And also this idea that only trans kids commit suicide, that also, that's a narrative that has been put out. And I'm not saying they don't, because I tried to commit suicide twice. So that is definitely within my community. It's also within the LGBTQ. It's in the rest of the community too. And it's also out there in just regular kids.
but isn't it at higher rates though?
I don't actually know about that. And so not all the studies say that. Right? Not all the studies say that. They don't say that. They say now what they're doing is they're pushing a narrative that says if you don't get to transition, you're going to kill yourself. So now what I hear from the youth is if you don't give me hormones, I'm going to kill myself. Right? We've given them that language. We've actually given them the language to say, if you don't give me this, I'm going to kill myself. We kill ourselves if we don't get it. Why would we give kids that language? Why would we tell kids that they're going to kill? Why can't we just tell kids, hey, wait a minute, slow down. There's a lot of things we can do here. You're not going to kill yourself because you have lots of opportunities. Instead, we're like, you're going to kill yourself if you don't transition. Well, of course, kids are going to think that. And now kids are going to be like, I'm going to kill myself. It's insane. I'm just actually disgusted in the way it's not healthy.
There's some kind of like glorification of suicide and mental health problems in media as well. You think of the stuff that influences our kids,
That's
the
right.
13 Reasons Why Netflix series, that kind of thing, which I think that contributes to that. But while we're talking about trans youth, I want to ask you about something else that's controversial, which is trans sports and trans participation in sex segregated sports. For me, I have mixed feelings about this because I really, on one level, don't care. There were a few trans people at my high school who just one day, there was a summer, I'm thinking of one person in particular, Jen, who showed up after summer break as Jay and just started using the men's room, using the male locker rooms, and socially transitioning. No one really cared. I don't think I really noticed. Like I just kind of was like, shrugged my shoulders and went about my day. But I will say this. I was a high school athlete. I still play soccer today. The boys soccer team was not very good. I was the captain my senior year. We lost more than we won. The girls team was pretty good. They would win more of their games in their league than us. Yet when we would scrimmage them, we'd trash them 8-0. We would trash them. Right. The same way that the World Cup winning U.S. women's national team lost to U15 professional boys team, right? Under 15. So I guess what I'm asking here is, this has been deemed transphobic and beyond the pale to even discuss. But I think that particularly when it comes to trans women, because trans men are only putting themselves at a disadvantage by competing in men's sports. So I am fine with that. Some of the laws from Republican governors actually prohibit trans men from participating in men's sports. I don't support that because there's no unfairness. But in terms of trans women who were born biologically male competing in women's sports, isn't there unfairness there? And why has that been ruled beyond the pale and bigoted to even believe?
Well, gosh, there's so much involved there. And I was a female athlete, and I was, a high-level female athlete. And back in the 80s, right, in late 70s, early 80s, and I did run against USSR, who were, remember those women? Like, they might as well have been trans dudes. I mean, they literally would come online with us with mustaches. We're like, what? And they would kick our asses. So that I have some actual real life experience with disadvantage in running at that level. So let's just talk about biology, people. And that's why I think that they want to take that biology off the table. Why they keep saying biology is not real, why they keep saying biology is a social construct, because they don't want to use biology. They think biology is being used against them. Now, that being said, why do some of these people in my community want to keep spreading this false narrative that trans women are not more powerful or have a different strength than biological women? Why do they want to do that? In order to get to play in the women's sports and override women's voices, which is what I see a lot of these days. And so, yeah, that could be deemed transphobic, but I'm not coming to it from a transphobic space. I'm coming to it from a space of fairness. And that's what sports is all about. It's about fairness, right? What's sportsmanship? Look up the definition. That's what sports has always been about. But now we have to just say, forget it. These girl trained her ass off for 10 years. And I know because I trained for the Olympics on that level. You have to train your ass off. And then some trans woman is just going to come and override that space. That's the unfairness that we're not talking about there. And so that is not transphobic. That is having a conversation of how do we make it work for all of us. I'm about coexistence. I'm not about putting trans women and trans men. No, how do we as trans people, because I am one of them, work in the world together? I have actually made myself coexist in the world. I actually coexist in the world. And so it's an amazing space to be in. And I know where I'm not welcome, and I know where I am welcome. And as a trans person, you are sort of on some level responsible for yourself and responsible to help guide the world to understand us better. You are doing a disservice to us when you push at the world and say you're all transphobic and TERFs. That shuts the conversation down, and no one wants to have a conversation anymore. There's no nuance. We know that. That's the magic word. The magic word is nuance.
Yeah, I guess to round us out, before we get to the most, so I will ask you in a few minutes for your most controversial food opinion. So don't say it now. But before we get to that, what's your kind of 30-second message to kind of young LGBT people who have bought into a lot of this woke message?
Oh, man, it makes me want to cry. I'm not kidding. I get attacked by some of these young kids, and I'm thinking, you don't even know what you're saying. So here's my message to you guys out there. Listen, you have to start doing your due diligence. You have to start investigating what people tell you, that it might not be true and it might be false. And you need to start taking responsibility for yourself. I don't care that you're part of a community. You are an individual first. And then the individuality is what will get you to be a badass in this world, not lumping on to some ideology or something that some people told you to say and be, and that makes you trans. You're making a big mistake that will hurt you in the long run.
What words would you leave for conservatives who see kind of the woke trans movement and reflexively dismiss all trans acceptance and all trans people? They say that's all crazy leftism. What's your message for those folks?
Please don't. Please don't. Look at me. I'm here. I am not one of those people, and I'm also not far right. I'm probably super in the middle. I'm willing to have the conversation. I'm willing to sit down and talk with you. I guarantee you, when you get to know me, you will change your mind. You will see that there's people like us. We don't want to push on you. We don't want to take from you. We want to coexist with you. That has never been my mission, to take from you, to override women's rights or men's rights or any of that. I know who I am. I'm a biological woman who lives as a man, and that's a basic space. Now can we move on? Now can we actually find a space in the world to actually coexist with each other? We'll have a better, stronger United States of America as well if we do that.
Well, I think that is a great place to leave it. That's a message I endorse, and it's one I think everybody can hopefully come to agree on. But Buck, for the most important part of the show, what is your most controversial food opinion?
I love that you asked me that. Hot dogs. I just can't believe we actually have hot dogs out there. I don't particularly think hot dogs are, and that's our culture. That's the American food. That should say everything to everyone. Our national food is a hot dog. So I don't eat them because I'm scared of them. So
yeah, I'll eat a hot dog once in a while, but don't tell me what's in them. Please. Right. Ignorance is bliss.
Don't eat those hot dogs, people. That's actually a reflection of who we are.
All right, Buck. Thanks so much for coming on.
Right on.